Welcome back, Lincoln Currency. I want you to imagine holding in your hand a small but powerful piece of American history. The 1990 Lincoln penny, a 1-cent coin that, at first glance, seems ordinary, almost forgettable. But look closer. There are stories in its metal, in its mint marks, in its design. There are lessons in economy and history, rare mistakes that can turn such a little coin into a treasure. This is the story of the 1990 1-cent coin, its origin, its design and symbolism, its physical characteristics, its rare varieties and errors, and what it might be worth, perhaps more than you imagine. From the moment a coin leaves the mint, it begins a journey. Its metal is mined, refined, shaped. The portraits and inscriptions chosen are selected to symbolize values. And over time, wear, history, rarity, and collector demand all become part of what makes the coin more, or less, than its face value. The 1990 penny is no exception. The year 1990 sits in a long thread of Lincoln pennies, stretching back to 1909, when the United States first issued the Lincoln cent to honor Abraham Lincoln's centennial birth, replacing the Indian head penny. The obverse design, the head side, features a right-facing bust of Abraham Lincoln, sculpted by Victor David Brenner. That likeness has endured, with tweaks, for decades. On the reverse side, for those years including 1990, 1959 through 2008, you see the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., designed by Frank Gasparo. The inscriptions include United States of America, e pluribus unum, and the denomination, 1 cent. Surmounting Lincoln's head is the national motto, In God We Trust, and on the obverse to his left the word, Liberty, together with the year, 1990, and depending on the mint, a mint mark beneath the year. Coinidentifier.com +2 Wikipedia +2 In terms of composition and weight, the 1990 penny is made of copper-plated zinc, 97.5% zinc, 2.5% copper. This composition came into use beginning in 1982, when it became economically untenable to make them mostly copper due to rising cost of copper. So by 1990, almost all pennies in circulation are zinc cores with a thin copper outer layer. The diameter is about 19.05 millimeters, that is 0.75 inch, with a plain, non-reeded, edge. The weight is approximately 2.5 grams. Coin value checker +2 Wikipedia +2 The mint marks. In 1990, there were coins made at Philadelphia, no mint mark, Denver, D, under the date, and San Francisco, S, for the proof coins. Proof coins are specially made for collectors, with special finishes, mirror-like surfaces, extra attention to detail. The San Francisco proof coins are fewer in number relative to the regular circulation strikes from Philadelphia and Denver. Coinidentifier.com +2 Coin value checker +2 Now, ordinary 1990 pennies are very common. Billions were minted. The Philadelphia, no mint mark, version had a mintage in the billions, about 6,851,765,000 coins. The Denver version had about 4,922,894,533 struck. The San Francisco proof version, about 3,299,559, which is much smaller, though that is for proof strikes. Coinidentifier.com +1 Because of those huge numbers, for most people, a 1990 penny in average, circulated condition is worth just its face value, that is 1 cent. They are everywhere. Wear, scratches, flattening of design features, changes in color from the copper plating wearing off, all make many coins look ordinary. But if you have a highly preserved specimen, perhaps uncirculated, perhaps proof, or even more, an error coin, that flips the value. Let's talk about rare varieties and errors, because that is where things get interesting. First, proof coins from San Francisco that show the S mint mark in high grade, especially with mirror fields and full detail, sell for more than common circulation examples. In uncirculated or proof condition, they might sell for a few dollars to perhaps $10 to $20 or more depending on condition. Coinidentifier.com +2 Coin value checker +2 Second, there is a very special kind of error, the 1990 proof penny from San Francisco that is missing the S mint mark. That is a rare error. A proof coin which should show the mint mark, but the die was made without it, or it failed to imprint. Fewer than 200 such examples are known. This is approximate, making it very rare and highly prized. Such coins have sold in the past at auction for thousands of dollars. Coin value checker +2 coinidentifier.com +2 for example, one report says a no-S proof 1990 Lincoln Memorial penny could fetch nearly $4,000 when in excellent condition. Some other possible error types include mint mark mistakes, repunched mint marks, though after 1990 the mint mark placement process changed, making RPMs much less common, broad strikes, coins struck without the collar, causing edges to be more spread out, or off-center strikes. But when we consider the allure of coins like the 1990 penny, we need to understand the psychology of collecting itself. Coins have a unique position among collectibles. They are everyday objects, yet they carry the symbols of national identity. They circulate in the millions or billions, yet a single flaw, a single deviation from the norm, can transform them into treasures. Collectors know this. That's why so many scrutinize even the most common coins, hoping to find a hidden gem. The search itself becomes part of the value. It's not just the metal. It's the mystery. A tiny coin could hold a fortune. That possibility gives even an ordinary 1990 cent a kind of aura. Think about how many of these were struck, literally billions. Billions of nearly identical pieces of metal, pressed at high speed by massive coining presses, dropped into bins, bagged, shipped to banks, poured into cash drawers, handed from palm to palm, riding through years in change jars and pockets and couch cushions. They've been in diners, vending machines, laundromats, elementary school classrooms, gas stations, concert ticket lines, all across the American landscape. Each one carries invisible histories: who touched it, where it traveled. So when a collector pulls one out of circulation that looks almost untouched, gleaming red as the day it left the mint, it's as though time has folded, as though this small piece of the past slipped through history without aging. That's what makes uncirculated coins magical. And then, sometimes, minting errors happen. The U.S. Mint is a vast industrial operation, precise and tightly controlled, but not infallible. Dies can break or crack. Planchets can be misfed, off-center, double-struck, broad-struck, struck on the wrong metal stock, or struck with dies from another denomination altogether. Some of the most valuable coins in history are the result of such accidents. So collectors scrutinize every surface of their coins for doubling in the letters, for missing mint marks, for misaligned strikes, for anomalies in the plating. In the 1990 penny, as we said, one famous and genuine rarity is the proof coin missing its S mint mark. Imagine how such an error happens: a die prepared for proof production somehow without the mint mark punch, pressed into service, striking a limited number of proofs before the error was caught. Those few escaped into collector sets and were later discovered, sending ripples of excitement through the hobby. That kind of error transforms a mass-produced coin into an accidental rarity. Suddenly, from among billions, only a handful are special, and scarcity drives value. But scarcity alone isn't enough. Condition matters. That's where grading comes in. And grading is both an art and a science. Professional graders examine coins under magnification, using controlled lighting, to assess strike quality, surface preservation, luster, color, and eye appeal. Two coins of the same date and mint mark can have wildly different values based solely on condition. One might be dull, scratched, spotted, with worn-down design, worth 1 cent. The other might be blazing red, flawless, sharp, perfectly struck, worth dozens or hundreds of times face value. It's a stark reminder that survival in pristine condition is rare, especially for coins that were intended for everyday use. This is why collectors place premiums on coins certified by grading services in high mint state grades, MS67, MS68, MS69, MS70, or for proofs in PR69 or PR70 deep cameo. A 1990 penny graded MS70 red would be a condition rarity even if billions were minted, because almost none survived so perfect. This is where the mythology of astronomical values creeps in. When the public hears about a rare penny selling for thousands, the story mutates in retelling. Thousands become millions, millions become hundreds of millions. Social media accelerates this. Headlines scream about rare penny worth a fortune, without explaining that it's a specific variety, in a specific grade, certified by specific experts, and even then the number might be $4,000, not $219 million. But once that number is out there, people begin imagining that any 1990 penny could be a lottery ticket. This fuels searching, which isn't a bad thing. It draws new people into the hobby, but it also creates disappointment when people realize their coins are common. And yet, the chance, however slim, that one could find a rare error gives excitement to the search. It's like panning for gold. Most pans come up empty. But once in a while, someone strikes a nugget. That is the dream. Now let's journey deeper into the artistic symbolism of the 1990 penny's design. Lincoln's portrait on the obverse shows him facing right, with a sober expression, wearing a coat, bow tie, and beard. His gaze is slightly downcast, serious. It is a quiet portrait, not heroic in posture but dignified. That was Brenner's intention, to humanize Lincoln, to show him as thoughtful rather than grandiose. The inscriptions frame him: "In God we trust" above, "Liberty" to the left, the date to the right, and if present, the mint mark just below the date. The tiny initials VDB are tucked on his shoulder. Flip to the reverse, and you see the Lincoln Memorial. The steps, the columns, the roof line, all in miniature detail. Between the central columns, barely visible to the naked eye, is the tiny seated statue of Lincoln, a coin within the coin, Lincoln within the Lincoln. The inscriptions arc around, United States of America at the top, E pluribus unum just above the memorial, and 1 cent at the bottom. The reverse design was intended not just as architecture but as symbolism. The memorial represents unity, stability, democracy, Lincoln's legacy. Every element carries meaning, and yet, this artistry was created to be mass-produced, to be spent without thought. That tension, beauty and banality, is part of what fascinates collectors. They see what most people overlook. That is the essence of numismatics, paying attention to the overlooked. The 1990 penny thus becomes a meditation on attention itself. How many people touched it and never really saw it? How many saw only a copper disc? How many might have thrown away a rare proof error without ever knowing? That mystery gives the coin power and storytelling, which is why it makes a perfect subject for your video. The economic story is just as compelling. In 1990, the U.S. economy was in transition. Inflation pressures from the 1970s had receded. Copper prices had stabilized. The cost of producing pennies remained just under or around their face value, thanks to the zinc core adopted in 1982. Before that, copper content alone made pennies worth more than 1 cent during copper price spikes. That's why composition changed, a pure economic decision. So your 1990 penny is mostly zinc, with only a whisper of copper on the outside. The total metal content is worth less than 1 cent at today's prices. Yet collectors may pay much more. That disconnect between intrinsic value and market value illustrates how numismatic value is created purely by rarity, condition, and demand, not by metal. It's a small object where symbolism outweighs substance. Literally, the symbol is worth more than the metal. Market data shows that common 1990 pennies sell on auction sites for pennies unless. Imagine walking into the heart of the United States Mint in 1990. The sound is overwhelming, a thunderous rhythm of machinery striking metal at hundreds of tons of pressure. Steel dies slam into zinc blanks with perfect alignment, imprinting Lincoln's solemn profile and the grand symmetry of the memorial in a fraction of a second. Sparks of heat bloom where steel meets metal, though you can't see them. There is a blur of motion, blanks rushing along conveyors, planchets fed into coining presses, struck coins tumbling down into bins by the tens of thousands. This is where your 1990 penny was born, in a world of relentless precision. Before they became coins, they were sheets of zinc. Rolls of zinc stock were fed through punching machines that cut out tiny discs, planchets, each one the size of a penny but blank and featureless. These planchets were then electroplated with copper in a controlled chemical bath, giving them their distinctive surface color. That copper shell is only about 8 microns thick, thinner than a human hair, yet it is enough to give the impression of a solid copper coin. The plated planchets were then washed, dried, annealed to soften them, and sent into high-speed presses. There, hardened steel dies bearing the coin's design struck them with about 35 to 50 tons of force, forcing metal to flow into every crevice of the design. The dies themselves were made through an intricate multi-stage process. Master hubs bearing the Lincoln portrait and the memorial reverse were used to create master dies, which then created working hubs, which then created working dies for production. Every design detail, the curls of Lincoln's beard, the subtle folds in his coat, the steps of the memorial, the tiny statue between the columns, all had to survive each reduction. Even a faint misalignment could ruin thousands of coins. The minting process is industrial, but also delicate, a dance of metal and design. And sometimes, human error slips through. A die might be polished too aggressively, erasing the mint mark. Or a blank might be fed misaligned, producing an off-center strike. These are the rare moments collectors hunt for, because imperfection creates uniqueness. The presses struck coins at speeds that boggle the mind, hundreds per minute, day and night, producing billions of 1990 pennies. After striking, the coins were inspected by machine vision systems and by human eyes, then poured into massive hoppers, funneled into cloth bags weighing thousands of pounds, sealed with metal tags, and shipped to Federal Reserve banks, then to commercial banks, then out into circulation. Once they left the mint, their individual fates diverged wildly. Some went straight into cash registers. Some were lost in vending machines. Some were buried in backyard soil, tarnishing. Some were kept pristine in mint sets, sealed in plastic, never touched by human hands. Decades later, they reunite in collections, in pockets, in coin rolls being searched by hopeful eyes. Under magnification, a 1990 penny becomes a tiny landscape. The surface glows with microscopic striations, flow lines from the metal movement during striking. On a proof, these fields are mirror smooth, reflecting light like glass, while the raised design elements are frosted to contrast. On a circulation strike, the surface is more matte, with tiny radial lines radiating from the center outward. The letters show sharp serifs, the edges of Lincoln's coat sharp or softened depending on where. The rim forms a raised border, protecting the design from abrasion. Under high magnification you can see where the copper plating has thinned on high points, Lincoln's cheek, jaw, and the steps of the memorial. These tiny details tell the story of the coin's life, like wrinkles on a face. Economically, every penny costs more than 1 cent to make. By 1990 the cost hovered near face value, but over time it has risen. The mint produces them not because they are profitable but because they are needed to make exact change, to keep the currency system functioning. This creates a paradox. The government spends millions producing something nearly everyone disregards. Billions of pennies accumulate in jars and drawers, effectively removed from circulation, yet production continues. This economic absurdity gives pennies an aura of persistence. They are the most common artifact of modern America, and yet almost invisible. That invisibility is why rare survivors are so exciting. It is as though 1 out of a billion suddenly lights up and says, "Notice me. I am different." Collectors respond to that rarity with passion. Entire subcultures have formed around searching through bank-wrapped rolls of pennies, hoping to find something special, a doubled die, a missing mint mark, a transitional composition. They bring magnifying loupes, digital scales, and reference books. They photograph finds, post them online, debate varieties, argue over grades. A single confirmed rare error can electrify these communities. When someone finds a rare NOS 1990 proof, word spreads fast. Collectors descend on auctions, bidding frenzies erupt, prices climb, and then stabilize as supply and demand settle. The market behaves like a living organism, responding to news and rarity. This is how value forms in numismatics, not from the metal, but from shared belief, from narrative, from the collective agreement that a certain anomaly is precious. And over it all hangs the legend, the whisper that somewhere, somehow, a single 1990 penny could be worth an impossible sum, maybe even $219 million. It is almost certainly myth, but myths have power. Myths make people look closer, search harder, care more. That myth has likely caused millions of people to pick up a magnifying glass for the first time. In that way, even though the $219 million figure is unreal, it has created real value by inspiring curiosity. It has turned billions of forgotten coins into potential treasures in people's imaginations. That psychological alchemy is perhaps the most valuable thing of all. Picture the dramatic climax of your video: a dimly lit table, a velvet pad, a pair of gloved hands lowering a single penny under a magnifier. The camera zooms close until the entire screen is filled with Lincoln's face. Every pore of the metal glows. The narrator whispers of its birth in fire and steel, its journey through decades, its miraculous survival in perfect condition, its potential to rewrite a life. The audience holds their breath, hearts quickening at the thought that they too might possess such a treasure, unnoticed among their change. That is the magic this little coin carries. The promise that even the most ordinary object might secretly be extraordinary. And when the lights come back up, you reveal the truth. Most are worth 1 cent, a few are worth a bit more, and only the rarest errors are worth thousands. But by then your viewers have seen the world through a collector's eyes. They have learned to see details, to notice beauty, to feel the pulse of history in the smallest things. That change in perception is your gift to them. Whether they find a fortune or not, they will never look at a penny the same way again. In the spring of 1990, inside the roaring cavern of the Philadelphia Mint, a single blank zinc planchet waited in line. It was just a dull silver disc, copper nowhere yet visible, riding along a vibrating steel track toward destiny. A copper skin had been electroplated over its surface only hours earlier, just a whisper-thin layer glowing faintly in the fluorescent lights. The blank could feel the vibration of machinery all around, the thunderclap of coining presses striking other planchets ahead of it. It knew nothing, not yet, only that it was moving towards something immense. Then, in an instant, everything changed. The blank slipped between two hardened steel dies, and with a deafening crash of pressure, over 40 tons of force in less than a blink, its face was reborn. Lincoln's calm, furrowed brow appeared where nothing had been before. Letters rose like cliffs: "In God we trust" above him, "Liberty" to the left, 1990 to the right. On the other side, the Lincoln Memorial sprang up, precise and symmetrical, the steps carved into metal valleys, the columns soaring, the tiny statue of Lincoln seated in shadowed dignity. The blank had become a coin. It had become a voice of a nation, a fragment of history, a symbol stamped into being. Tumbled from the press, it clinked into a growing pile of newborn pennies, all identical, all shining red. They were scooped up by vibrating feeders, funneled into massive cloth bags, tagged, weighed, and loaded onto trucks. The coin never saw the light of day again until the bag was slit open in a bank vault somewhere in Pennsylvania. A teller scooped handfuls into coin rolls, wrapping them in paper, sealing away their luster. The roll was shipped to a small-town grocery store, where the coin's journey truly began. It was handed out as change to a woman buying bread. For the first time, human skin touched its surface. The oils from her fingers left faint, invisible marks. It rode in her purse for a week, then clattered onto the counter at a diner to pay for a cup of coffee. From there it fell into the apron pocket of a tired waitress, who carried it through long shifts and tipped it into a jar at day's end. It mingled with nickels and dimes in the dark. By then, its surface had dulled slightly. Tiny hairline scratches marred its copper skin. It was becoming worn, becoming part of the human world. Over the years it passed through hundreds of hands. It rode in the pocket of a student taking a test, the palm of a child buying candy, the tip tray of a jazz club on a rainy night, the change drawer of a gas station on a lonely highway at 2 a.m. It lay forgotten in the dirt of a baseball field for a whole summer, rain washing over it, sunlight baking it, until a groundskeeper found it and dropped it into his pocket without a thought. It spent 6 years trapped under a couch cushion, pressed flat by countless sitting bodies, as the world outside changed. New presidents, new wars, new music, all while it lay still, silent, waiting. By the early 2000s, the copper surface had darkened to a warm brown. The luster of its birth was gone. The high points of Lincoln's cheek were smoothed. But it survived. Unlike so many of its brothers that corroded to powder when their copper skins cracked, this coin remained whole. In 2007 it slipped through the slot of a charity donation jar, where it waited again, until a volunteer rolled it with others and carried it to the bank. The bank counted it, bagged it, and sent it to another store, another till, another endless cycle. It had been through 1,000 unthinking exchanges, each one eroding it physically but layering it with invisible stories. And then, everything changed again. In 2023, a young coin collector was searching through a box of pennies from a bank. He had taught himself to look closely, to spot errors, to read dates. He dumped the coins on a desk under a bright lamp and began inspecting them one by one. Most were nothing, brown, worn, ordinary. But when he lifted this coin, something about it caught his eye. It was darker than red but not completely brown, and though worn, it still had sharp details. He set it aside. Later, under magnification, he noticed something stranger, a faint doubling on the date. His heart quickened. He checked references, scoured forums, compared photographs. He wasn't sure, but he felt the tug of possibility. He sent it to a grading service, spending more than the coin seemed worth on postage and fees. Weeks passed. Then the package returned, sealed in a hard plastic holder, with a label, 1991C, mint error, double dia verse, negative 58 Australian dollars. His hands shook. It wasn't the no-s proof error worth thousands, but it was still rare, still special. In that moment, this humble coin became a treasure. He placed it carefully in his display case. It would never circulate again. It had been rescued from oblivion. Now it sits under soft light, safe, admired, still only worth perhaps a few $100s, not millions, not life-changing wealth, but priceless to him. When visitors come, he shows it with pride. He tells the story of finding it, of the years it must have traveled, of the miracle that it survived. He doesn't think about the hundreds of hands that touched it before him, but they are all there, silent, encoded in the faint scratches and worn edges. This coin has lived more lives than anyone will ever know, and maybe, just maybe, decades from now, when he is old, he will pass it to his child, and the coin will keep traveling, not through cash registers but through hearts, through stories, through the minds of people who see not just copper and zinc, but history, survival, and wonder. It will live far longer than any of the hands that once held it. And that is the quiet immortality of coins like the 1990 penny. They outlast us, carrying whispers of our lives into a future we will never see. It began as a rumor. Just a whisper among collectors on obscure forums late at night, a faint thread of speculation carried like a spark through dry grass. Someone claimed they had seen it, a 1990 penny unlike any other, sealed in a private collection, hidden from the world for decades. They said it was struck not on a zinc core at all, but on a solid gold planchet, somehow smuggled from the mint floor in an unrecorded experiment, with a mirror finish like still water and not a single imperfection under 100x magnification. At first, no one believed it. Such a thing should be impossible. No records existed. The mint never struck gold pennies. But still, the rumor spread, because deep down, collectors want to believe. Photographs appeared next, blurry and dim, like ghost sightings. A coin the color of warm sunlight, Lincoln's profile glowing, the Lincoln Memorial burning like a temple in molten metal. Experts dismissed it as plated, as fake, as digital trickery. But then the story twisted. The coin, they said, had been authenticated in secret by a former mint engraver who had held it in trembling hands and declared, "This should not exist." And when the coin surfaced again, it was no longer just a rumor. It had a name. The Phoenix Cent. By the time it reached public view, the world was ready to explode. A major auction house announced it would be sold. Headlines screamed across the globe. Television crews set up outside the building. Collectors, billionaires, museums, sovereign wealth funds, all lined up to bid. No one had ever seen anything like it. It lay in a glass case under white light, spinning slowly on a velvet turntable. The gold shimmered as if alive. Around it, the air seemed electric. People stood in silence as if in a cathedral. On its obverse, Lincoln's face looked more alive than on any other coin, every hair of his beard etched like sunlight on frost. The reverse showed the Lincoln Memorial, each column perfectly square, each step flawless, and in the center the tiny seated statue gleamed like a captured star. The auctioneer's voice cracked through the hush. "Ladies and gentlemen, lot number 219, the 1990 Phoenix Cent. The only known example. Authenticated by 3 independent grading services. Struck on a 22-karat gold planchet, weighing 3.11 grams. Mirror finish, flawless strike. Certified PR 70 deep cameo. Opening bid $10 million. A murmur rolled through the crowd like distant thunder. Hands rose. The numbers climbed. 10 million became 20, then 30, then 50. The room pulsed with adrenaline. Phones buzzed as remote bidders joined from Tokyo, Dubai, New York. At $100 million, the audience erupted into gasps and scattered applause. The auctioneer's face gleamed with sweat. Still the bids came, relentless, like drumbeats. 110. 140. 180. A hedge fund titan from Singapore locked eyes with an art museum curator from Geneva. Neither blinked, and then, silence. 2 bidders remained. The billionaire leaned forward. 200 million. The curator hesitated, then lifted her paddle. 205. The billionaire didn't flinch. $219 million. Time froze. The air seemed to vibrate. The auctioneer's gavel hovered. $219 million. He repeated softly, almost reverently. Going once, going twice, sold. The gavel struck like a thunderclap. The room erupted. Cameras flashed like lightning. Reporters shouted over each other. The billionaire stood still, eyes on the coin, breathing like he'd run a marathon. In that moment, a single 1990 penny had become the most valuable coin in human history. Not the rare 1933 St. Gaudens double eagle. Not the 1794 flowing hair dollar. Not the brasher doubloon. A penny, the humblest coin of all, had shattered the ceiling of value. The world reeled. News anchors spoke its name with awe. Stock tickers mentioned it alongside oil and gold. Museums called it the modern Mona Lisa of coins. And ordinary people everywhere dug through their jars of change with shaking hands, wondering if another miracle was waiting. Overnight, the 1990 Phoenix Cent became a legend. Its image flashed across skyscraper billboards. It appeared on magazine covers, in documentaries, in whispered conversations. The billionaire who bought it placed it in a temperature-controlled glass vault beneath his private art museum, guarded around the clock, insured for $500 million. Only a few were allowed to see it, and even they had to wear gloves and stand behind glass. It was treated not as money but as a relic, as though Lincoln himself had touched it. Scholars debated its origin, its meaning, how it could exist. The U.S. Mint announced, in the days after the auction, the world seemed different somehow. The sale of the 1990 Phoenix Cent rippled outward like the shockwave of a distant explosion, subtle but everywhere. Newspapers ran it on their front pages above stories of politics and wars. News anchors spoke about it with the tone usually reserved for moon landings or royal weddings. Children who had never thought about coins began looking at the pennies in their lunch change with wide, wondering eyes. A simple coin, the most common of all, had become a myth. And that myth had rewired something in the collective mind. Collectors who had spent their lives in quiet obscurity suddenly found the world knocking on their doors. Auction houses were flooded with calls. Banks reported a surge in requests for boxes of pennies from people who had never rolled coins before. Social media filled with close-up photographs of 1990 cents under kitchen lamps, every nick and scratch dissected by strangers across the globe. For a while, the world seemed to turn copper-colored. People spoke of the penny gold rush, a frenzy of searching that swept through homes, schools, and workplaces. Desk drawers were emptied, jars were overturned, couch cushions were lifted as if they might be hiding treasure. It wasn't really about money anymore. It was about wonder, about the dream that something forgotten could be priceless. Prices for 1990 pennies, even ordinary ones, surged. Coin dealers who once tossed them into bulk bins now locked them in display cases. A well-struck uncirculated example, once worth a few cents, sold for hundreds. Minor die cracks or doubled letters fetched thousands. Every small imperfection became a potential miracle. The grading services were overwhelmed, packages of pennies arriving by the truck. Somewhere near you, right now, there is a small jar of coins. Maybe it's in the back of a drawer, or under your bed, or on the corner of your desk where sunlight touches it every morning without you noticing. Maybe you've walked past it 1,000 times, thinking of it as clutter, as weight, as nothing. Inside, among nickels and dimes and old bus tokens, there might be a 1990 penny. You've probably touched it without realizing. It might have slipped through your hands at a gas station, or rattled in your coat pocket, or lain for years at the bottom of your backpack like a forgotten seed. It is waiting. Pick it up. Feel its cool surface against your skin. Turn it over slowly, letting the light catch the soft arcs of Lincoln's jaw, the tiny steps of the memorial. Notice the little scratches, the faded glow, the tiny letters you've never stopped to read before. This coin has seen more than you know. It has passed through more lives than you can imagine. It has heard laughter and arguments, felt the tremble of first dates, and the silence of empty rooms. It has been lost and found and lost again. It has survived fire, rain, pockets, purses, decades. It has never stopped moving. And now, for this one moment, it has stopped with you. It is easy to think it's just a penny, that it's worth nothing. But value is strange. Value hides. Once, so did the Phoenix cent. Once, it was just another coin too, until someone looked closely. Maybe the world is full of unnoticed miracles, and maybe this is one of them. Maybe all it takes is someone willing to see. Maybe you. Hold it up to the light. Let it glow in your fingers. Imagine its journey stretching out behind it like a thread, back through the years, through every hand, every pocket, every whispered wish it carried without knowing. Imagine its future, too. Maybe it will ride with you tomorrow. Maybe you'll give it to someone else who needs a little luck. Maybe it will vanish into the world again, traveling quietly through strangers' lives for decades more until another pair of hands, long from now, stops and wonders about it just like you are now. That's the secret the 1990 penny has carried all along. It isn't just about money. It never was. It's about time, and touch, and the way the smallest things can hold entire worlds inside them. It's about how something overlooked can still change everything, if you only pause long enough to see it. It's about how even in a world rushing endlessly forward, something so small can remind you to slow down and notice the present moment resting in your palm. So tonight, before you sleep, go find your jar of coins. Open it gently. Tip the pennies out onto the table. Watch them roll like tiny suns. Search for 1990. Search not just with your eyes, but with your heart. Listen for the stories humming quietly inside them. Somewhere among them, there might be something extraordinary. Or maybe they are all extraordinary, and the only thing they've ever needed is someone to notice, and if you find one, hold it close for just a moment. Not because it might be worth millions, but because it is proof that even the smallest things endure. Because it has waited for you all this time. Because it has something to tell you, if you're willing to listen. the lights dim. The music swells like the first rush of dawn. All the pieces of the journey rise before your eyes at once. The roar of the mint presses in 1990, the glimmer of newborn copper, the soft hands of strangers passing it from life to life, the darkness of drawers and pockets and forgotten places, the moment of rediscovery under a trembling magnifier. The blinding eruption of that auction where the world gasped as a penny shattered every boundary of value and climbed to $219 million. You see it all, flowing like a river through time, billions of coins moving through billions of lives, and yet this one stood out, glowing like a star pulled from the night. The smallest coin, rising higher than anyone believed it could, and you realize something. It was never about luck. It was never about metal, or money, or even rarity. It was about belief, the quiet, stubborn belief that hidden in the ordinary might be something extraordinary. It was about eyes that dared to look closer, about hands that chose to hold gently, about hearts that refused to stop wondering. The 1990 penny became priceless not because it changed, but because people changed when they saw it. It became a mirror, reflecting their hope back at them, showing them the greatness they had forgotten they carried inside themselves. Imagine now the phoenix cent turning slowly in perfect light, alone in its glass vault, watched by silent faces who have traveled across oceans just to see it for a moment. It gleams like frozen sunlight. But look closer, beyond the shine, beyond the fame, and you can see the ghost of what it once was. You can see it lying in dust, sitting in a diner till, clinking among thousands of others. You can see the whole impossible arc of its life, the vast distance it traveled not across miles but across meaning. It began as 1 cent. It became wonder incarnate, and here is the final, staggering truth: it is still just a penny. It has not changed. What changed was the world around it. What changed were the eyes that saw it, the stories told about it, the dreams built upon it. That is the real treasure, not the gold or the fame or the number on a screen, but the spark it lit inside millions of hearts. Because now every person who watches your story, every person who hears this tale, will never again look at a penny the same way. They will see possibility where they once saw nothing. They will feel history where they once felt weight. They will carry wonder in their pockets. And that is how legends are born. Not from crowns or thrones or thunder, but from the smallest things, unnoticed until the moment someone dares to see them. The 1990 penny rose from silence and became eternal, and in doing so it carried us all with it. It proved that greatness can come in the quietest form. That value is not given, it is discovered. That even the tiniest spark can set the world ablaze. So as the lights rise again and the world returns to motion, remember this: somewhere out there, in your own life, there is something small and overlooked, waiting for you to see it. Something as humble as a penny, and just as full of hidden fire. Find it. Believe in it. Hold it close. Because the next story that astonishes the world might begin in the palm of your hand. The world is quiet now. The lights are gone. The crowds have faded. Somewhere far away, the phoenix cent rests in its vault, untouched, unmoving, asleep in perfect stillness. No one is watching it at this moment. No cameras, no voices, no applause. Just silence, and the faint steady hum of the machines that guard it. And yet, even in this silence, it is not alone. Because echoes of its story still ripple outward, invisible and endless, like rings spreading across dark water long after the stone has sunk. Somewhere a child lies awake, thinking about it, imagining the glint of copper in their hand and wondering if magic might be real after all. Somewhere a man who has stopped believing in miracles finds himself turning over the coins in his pocket, slower than before, gentler, as if they might whisper something to him if he listens closely enough. Somewhere an old woman smiles to herself as she drops a single penny into a wishing fountain, not caring if the wish comes true, only caring that she can still wish. They do not know they are thinking of it, but they are. The story has threaded itself into their hearts. It is part of them now. Time will keep moving. Years will slide past like soft rain on glass. The frenzy will dim, and the headlines will yellow and fade. The phoenix scent will pass to new hands, then to more hands after those, and each new owner will call themselves its guardian, knowing in truth that it belongs to no one. It will outlive them all. It will outlive you. It will outlive everyone who ever stood in awe of it. One day, even the name of the person who paid $219 million will be forgotten. But the coin will remain, small and patient, carrying its story like a secret ember. That is what coins do. They wait. They endure. And someday, perhaps in a far future we cannot imagine, long after the buildings we know have crumbled and the voices we remember have fallen silent, someone will find it again. They will hold it up in trembling fingers, sunlight glinting on its ancient surface, and they will wonder who made it, who touched it, why it still matters. They will not know your name or mine, or the world that once surrounded it. They will only know that it endured when everything else faded. And in that moment, for them, it will burn bright again. The phoenix will rise once more. So now, let the screen go dark. Let the sound fall away. Let silence close around you like a soft blanket. And as you sit there, listening to nothing, remember this one last thing: the story never truly ends. Not as long as someone, somewhere, still believes. Not as long as one small coin still. Somewhere, in the corner of a dusty attic, an old glass jar sits half forgotten on a wooden shelf. Inside, among the dull clatter of ordinary change, a single 1990 penny rests upside down, its face hidden, its story waiting. No one knows it is there. No one has touched it in decades. But if the light caught it just right, for one perfect second, it would glow, faint, golden, alive. And someday, someone will find it. And when they do, everything will begin again.